Thanks for checking out this episode of the Always Forward podcast. This community exists for everyone, whether you're an elite athlete, fitness enthusiast, business owner, leader, student, parent, or pretty much anything else. This content is for you. What unifies our listeners is a passion to improve themselves in order to impact the world. Make sure to check out our website and follow us on Instagram for more content like workouts, previous episodes, and articles. Also, make sure to visit our online store for Always Forward apparel and other merchandise. This episode is a part of our Be More Human series. In this series, we are focusing on different aspects of what it means to be human, how we've strayed from our original design, and helpful ways to take back control of our lives by living with passion and purpose. If you enjoy the episode, take a second to leave us a review and share it with a friend.
Before jumping into the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Pursue Outfitters and Tennessee Pre. Check out Pursue Outfitters apparel at pursueoutfitters.com. Check out Tennessee Pre. Unstack your stack with Tennessee Pre. Your focus and energy will be incredible.
All right, cool. Well, let's jump in, and then if we want to talk a little bit quickly after about anything else, or just try to connect later on.
Perfect.
That's great too. So, sweet. All right, let's get started.
Let's do it.
We are here with Noah Ohlsen, and so just to get started, Noah, why don't you just kind of fill in any listeners? I think that people listening to this podcast are going to know who you are and your accomplishments, but just a quick 4 or 5 things just about Noah.
Cool. Yeah, that's a cool feeling. And it's definitely not something that I go into a conversation expecting, but if anybody out there is already aware, I appreciate you. If you're not, hopefully this conversation ends and you feel like you got to know a good person. That's what I care about. I'm humbled to be here. Thanks for having me, JP. Few things to know about me. I don't know why the first thing I want to go to is my age. I'm 29 years old, getting up there. I live in Miami, Florida, which you have to say this day and age that we're in the Corona times. It's mid-pandemic, still in quarantine here at home. Getting ready for the CrossFit Games, which are maybe going to happen, maybe not, in about a month and a half. So it's a weird world, but I'm glad that we get to connect virtually. That's kind of one of the benefits of all this stuff going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Noah, for anybody who doesn't know, Noah is 7-8 time.
If the games happen this year, it would be my 7th consecutive CrossFit Games.
So 7-time hopeful, 7-time CrossFit Games competitor. Got 2nd last year, and I had the opportunity to connect with Noah, and honestly, kind of just stumble into getting connected whenever we were down in Miami back in February for Waterpalooza. So Scooter, co-owner of the gym and one of our coaches, was competing down at Waterpalooza. So I was down there with him, got to connect with Noah at Peak 360, which is a gym he trains at. And it was a really cool experience. So with this whole concept of just kind of be more human, I think that like few hour period that I was at Peak 360 with kind of your community, Noah, and getting connected with a few people in your community just around the Miami scene and Waterpalooza. I feel like I met some of the best human beings that I've
That's
ever
awesome.
kind of in that time. And so just extremely authentic, genuine people who clearly operate with like a different perspective, like they walk around like with their eyes open to how they can impact, how they can kind of influence and help, regardless of whether or not they have hundreds of thousands of followers or if they're just like a normal Miami dude.
Yeah. I will say real quick, if you don't mind, that we felt the same way about you when you left. And that's not just boosting you up to make the podcast feel good, but really when you left, Guido and I were chatting about how good of a guy you seem to be. And we were very positively influenced by you in the short period of time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I think that, I think that maybe those things bring each other out. I was telling even Guido, who owns Peak 360, for those who don't know, that like as I was leaving, I was like, man, this is how I want, and I hope my gym feels. It's like people are like, there's something special about this. And in conversations with Guido, knowing like it really is kind of the spirit of Peak 360 and what kind of exists there, that just draws people in, whether they know what it is or And so in this kind
It's
of,
about so much.
oh yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on you.
Oh no, you're good. And so yeah, like in this concept and in this pursuit of being more human, ultimately what we're trying to focus on during this series is the fact that like it seems as if general population in like at least Western culture has kind of we've kind of kicked to the curb like our original design of what it means to be uniquely human, and we're just kind of going through the motions, right? Like I've explained this a couple different times to people that it felt like months ago, whenever I knew that there were some red flags for me personally, that I started to make some different decisions, take some time to evaluate those things. And it literally felt like I got like unplugged from the matrix. Like I was plugged into the system and then like somebody unplugged it. And I was like, whoa, what have I been doing? And it's just this idea of kind of taking back our humanity and being uniquely human, living into what that means. And I would say that my interactions with you, even just kind of interactions virtually, of a sense, and then just kind of the whole Peak 360 Miami community down there, are people who are living really well into their humanity. Like, and so I just want to pick your brain and hope that maybe in this conversation, just kind of free flowing through it, that people will be encouraged in that same way that I was, because there are a lot of days that like I can recall that experience and go like, I want to create that, or I want to live into that the same way. And so
That's wild. It's interesting to me that something that was so impactful and profound to you, to me was, and I don't mean this disrespectfly at all, and it's maybe the way I'm about to say it is not exactly the way I'm thinking of it, but to me it was just a normal day, meaning that I woke up that day and I went into the gym just to go hang out, and I knew people were going to be dropping in because Wadapalooza had just ended. And so I just, something that was a simple everyday thing of going across the street to the gym for me ended up being this moment for you that you recall. And that just makes me think, man, there are so many moments that happen in our lives that we may not realize that could be these big special moments for other people, even though maybe we don't realize it for ourselves. And that also makes me think of Michael Jordan. I just started watching The Last Dance, finally.
Me too.
Yeah, because it was finally on Netflix. So, and he talked about one, and I don't know the exact quote, but he says something about how if he's going to perform every night, because if there's one kid who went and it was the first game that he ever saw Michael Jordan play, Michael Jordan wanted that kid to remember him as the greatest and not to have an off night there when that kid's like, oh, Michael Jordan's not that good. And so that just makes me think of that same thing. Like, go out there every day and be special, be impactful, be positive, because you never know when that is going to impact somebody.
Yeah, I think that's huge, man. And I would love to, I guess, kind of get into that. I kind of have a note on that. And so, like I said, I've got some notes, but just free flowing, I think is better. But that line in Last Dance, I remember, stuck out to me as well. It was like the narrator was quoting Michael Jordan on him saying that he knew that every night it was somebody's first time in the crowd watching him play.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, just super compelling and motivating.
Absolutely.
When you try to take that off of the biggest stage and put it into just everyday life, that like it's always the thing is always more than the thing, you know, like
right. It can be. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it can be. You know, it can be huge.
But
you can say one thing to one person that changes their life, and to you, you didn't even realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So, so I think like just digging into this a little bit, I think on that point, I would love to know how you kind of operate with that sense of selfless success. And so kind of the same concept for you of, you even posted yesterday on Instagram, I'm not entirely sure what I'm training for. And so as I read that, I mean, it totally makes sense to me that like practically you're not quite sure if you're training for the actual CrossFit Games or not.
Right.
When I read that and go like, dude, Noah is training for so many bigger things than just the CrossFit Games. And I don't actually know how many followers you're at right now. It's a lot on Instagram, but like all of those people that watch you that kind of garner inspiration, that's big. And so what is kind of the fuel for your training outside of the competition floor?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because having read a lot of the comments that were feedback to what I had said, those comments and the things that people said, those were the things that kind of fueled me up and made me feel like, you know what, no matter what happens, I am doing something positive. I am doing something impactful. People were commenting that just kind of seeing me getting after it every day, whether or not I end up competing, was inspirational to them and makes them kind of get up off the couch. And that to me almost means more than being able to go out and win the games. I know that the opportunity to go and compete and win the games would just allow me to have a bigger platform and impact more people. But all of the comments yesterday kind of put me at ease, where no matter what happens, if I do get to go compete, then yes, all this training and hard work was worth it. And I think hopefully people would recognize that I put it in, and whatever the result is, it's because of this training. If it doesn't happen, it's okay, because people recognize that I was committed to the process. And if that in any way stirred something inside of them to not take this quarantine period as like downtime and to get up and improve themselves in some way, even if they are training or working towards something that may be uncertain, then that means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that was one of the things just kind of in our previous conversation of wanting to pick your brain about, is the fact that you seem to have a significant perspective and view on your self-improvement as self-improvement for the purpose of global, humanity, other improvement. And so you improve yourself to impact other people. And that's kind of the whole premise of what we want to be about. And yeah, so I think that the way that I would consider it is like, I don't know the exact numbers because I haven't researched it, but I know that there are probably like millions of people who can like snatch 275, right? And clean and jerk, weight that a lot of guys can't deadlift. And so people can perform at super high levels, right? And that's taken nothing away from your ability to perform at an incredibly high level. So I've obviously gotten to even watch you compete in person. And I mean, it is like being somebody who's also literally done the same workouts you have done.
Yeah.
On events you win and stuff like that. Having to scale weight back, like I can appreciate and respect it. And then at the same time go, but Noah's impact's bigger than that. And so millions of people can perform at a high level, but literally only Noah can make the unique impact Noah can make. And so what is that impact for you? What do you?
Thank you, first of all, for saying that. I mean, it just kind of reaffirms what I feel and think and I'm still figuring it out. It's not solidified. I don't have everything all figured out. So I do think that over the last few years, I've started to realize that my impact is going to be more than the numbers. Like you said, I don't think most people are going to remember me for my PRs or my time in an open workout. I think people will hopefully remember me based on something that changed them in a positive way. And if it's inspiration in terms of fitness, then that's awesome, because then maybe they get to improve their health. If it's inspiration in terms of, or just like a shift in perspective, and something that allows them to be a little bit happier and more joyful, then that's awesome, because I love that. And so I think that, my impact on people means a lot more to me than what I can do personally. So it's kind of like you said, I'm improving myself so that I can be the best version of me for other people and for the world.
So would you say, and I think this is getting into the kind of the happy but hungry mentality a little bit, would
Sure.
you say that when it comes to points of performance, or when it comes to hard training days, that one of the things that compels you and motivates you more so now is how you can impact other people by performing better versus just trying to beat the next guy?
Yeah. It's not so much about, I mean, there has to be a bit of a competitive element. You know, I need to be able to stack up to some of the other training times and weights and all of that. But for the most part, I'm trying to drive myself as far as I can down a positive road so that I can go out there and, like I said, expand my platform and my reach and just allow myself more opportunity to do good and to help other people. And it's, again, that's pretty new to me. You know, I think to be honest, growing up, didn't have that perspective and was maybe a little bit more selfish in the things that I did. And that goes all the way up until maybe like, I don't know, a good 5 or 6 years ago. And I don't know what it was that flipped the switch, but I think a part of it was being able to start to see some positive feedback from interactions with people and recognize that felt better than whatever I was individually accomplishing. And then just slowly that started to build, and I realized that meant more to me than just my own accomplishments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't actually know why I'm thinking about this. I think it may have been a podcast you had done previously that I had listened to. But is there like a this version of Noah that existed in the space that you kind of had to rewrite the narrative on a little bit?
Yeah. And I don't know that it was a purposeful rewriting. It was just, again, I did change as a person a lot. And when I started my competitive career, I think a lot of it was selfish, and I just wanted to accomplish titles and accolades because, I don't know, they were shiny and they looked good. You know, I wanted to get a jersey that had my name on it just because. And say it again.
21 years old at that point.
Yeah, right. I did start right around 2021. And so once I did finally get that stuff, I realized that it wasn't all that it was chalked up to be. You know, it was cool to have the jersey, but after I wore the jersey for the weekend, I put it in my closet and I never touched it again. And I was like, all right, that doesn't mean that much. What does mean a lot is the way that I get to interact with people, my mood and attitude, and the friends and relationships that I've built. Like, that stuff lasts a lot longer than a t-shirt in the closet.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So moving into a little bit of the happy but hungry mentality. I think that that was a big piece for me. And I think that I am not a naturally optimistic person.
You seem so.
Yeah, maybe I am more so than I give myself credit for. I think previous to middle of last year, when I started to kind of have that come out of the whatever I was in experience, a big part of that for me, that red flag, was how kind of cynical or jaded I had become, even just about myself. And so the happy but hungry mentality for me fits perfectly like where I had felt a pretty serious conviction of contentment. You know, I think that that's what it means to me, is a sense of being content in all things, yet at the same time working from that place, you know, going after things from a place of contentment. And so for you, what's kind of the driving factor for you in that? What does the phrase mean to you? I obviously, like, after Miami, got it tattooed on.
So cool. Yeah.
So for you, what is it? You know, when you think about the phrase, what does that mean? How does that kind of integrate itself into day-to-day life for you?
Yeah, it's cool that it can mean so many different things to so many different people as well. I had a friend of mine who runs a company called Dope Bottle, and they're all about sustainability, and they're creating these reusable water bottles so that plastic doesn't make its way into the ocean. Long story short, And he interpreted Happy But Hungry as a mode for sustainability, because that's what they're all about. And in the sense that if you're pursuing something that is taxing on you, right? That's like the hungry part. You know, you're getting after something, you're working hard, you're grinding, but the happiness and the enjoying that process allows it to be sustainable and allows you to do it for longer. Because if you're lacking one of those elements, right? If you don't have the happiness and you're just grinding along and you're just hungry, eventually you're probably going to break, because you're going to realize that it's not pleasurable and you're not getting anything back from it. And then it's kind of on the opposite side of things. If you're just happy all the time, then you do end up most likely being too content. You know, if you're just satisfied with the way everything is going, then you're just going to sit back and enjoy that. And that's probably not going to last forever. And you're going to end up in a pretty sad place. So sustainability, balance, happiness, it can mean so many different things. To me, it was a way of showing my coach that I could train with that attitude, because we had a conversation about CrossFit being difficult and needing to kind of be a little bit angry sometimes when you're going to that dark place in training. And that's just not the way I operate. And I didn't want him to discount my abilities because I wasn't able to draw from this darkness. And so I had the conversation with him where I said, man, I am happy and I love what I'm doing and I'm out there having fun and laughing, but don't mistake that for me being content, because I'm still really hungry. Like, I want to do great. I want to be excellent. And so I'm going to try to have a good balance of both of those things. I'm going to enjoy the process and I'm going to continue to strive to be better. And hopefully those can carry each other along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm interested to hear like how that training perspective, that Happy But Hungry training perspective impacts your, the work that you do outside the gym. Like, do you operate with that same, like, because what's awkward for me is watching dudes in the gym that even I get to train with, or I get to watch train. They do go to that like dark, angry, like, I'm not sure who they're mad at, but they decide to get really mad before these bike intervals or before this heavy whatever. And I don't see it any other time, right? So like, part of it is kind of like that argument for like, okay, well, you're going to that primal place or whatever. But I tried it too. Like, when I was like, all right, I really want to perform or whatever.
Yeah, just like trying to draw on that aggression.
It didn't work. It just it makes success not feel great, and it makes when you fail way harder to bounce.
Oh man, you just nailed it. I was gonna say, I used to compete that way. Like, when I first started competing, I remember going out regionals floor, and prior to being brought to the floor, we're in these corrals, and I remember like amping myself up as if I were a caged animal, like pacing back and forth and like breathing and flaring my nostrils and taking the floor like angry. And if everything goes according to plan, then sure, that feels maybe not as great as it would if you were enjoying it. But when things go wrong, it spirals out of control so quickly. If you're angry and you're taking that into a workout and you like start failing something or you get no reps, that makes it so much more difficult to deal with than if you're in this calm, cool, collected, good place.
Yeah, absolutely. So hear me out on this. So this is like bringing it back to the whole primal concept, this primal humanity. So oftentimes I like to compare and contrast like the training we do to really the most primal state we can reach. Like, but just because life is so soft, you know, and comfortable in many ways now. And so I do like to use the terminology with people that I coach, or even personally. Like, I have this phrase, like this idea of to wake up hunting. And so like for me, you are kind of hunting something whenever you train, or even just the same mentality. If you do some research on what like it meant tribally to hunt, it wasn't like for sport, and it wasn't for like, it wasn't a stress reliever, and it wasn't to like get your anger out. It was
survival.
Yeah, it was survival and provision at that point.
Yeah.
So like, to compare you previous to an event on the competition floor to kind of like a primal human being going out to hunt for what they need to survive, I guarantee you they weren't like flaring their nostrils and getting angry or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's a much more clear-headed approach to, I have to do this because this is what literally I was created to do. And if I don't, I won't be able to provide. If I don't, I won't be able to impact. If I don't, I won't be able to support. And so I know it's a hard connection to make, but it's just that idea of, for you, it's CrossFit, right? But for so many people, it's not. So when they go hunting, how awkward is it to hunt that thing with that sense of like anger and like,
Yeah.
and so like to
It's
know
a cool analogy.
you would approach that your job, literally CrossFit is your job. So
Right.
You approach it from that perspective of happiness and humility, but also that like sense of hunger that causes you to be able to enjoy it, I think is huge.
Yeah.
So how do you take that off the competition floor? So like most people listening to this, most people following you on Instagram, most of like your fans, supporters, all that, they don't have the opportunity to operate with the happy but hungry mentality necessarily on the competition floor.
Right.
So I imagine that it's the same way that you don't flare your nostrils and like pound your chest before a competition event. You probably don't deal with hard things at home that way either. Like,
Yeah.
you know, or do other work that way. So how do you take?
Yeah, I think that it can translate into a lot of different areas of life. Hopefully, just the general concept of happy but hungry, and then I can kind of go into a little bit more minutia. Is that the right word? Minute details on it. But yeah, the ability to, again, sustainability was a great word. When my friend Max kind of introduced that to me, I was like, that does fit perfectly, because if you're at work every day and you're just grinding along doing something that you don't enjoy because you have to get the paycheck, that's only going to last so long. Eventually you're going to start looking for another job or acting out in a way that's going to maybe get you fired from your job. Who knows? So I think being able to find something that you love to do so that you can appease the happy aspect of the phrase. But then when you're doing that thing, also trying to exhibit your best qualities, you know, like to do things well. There's a difference between doing something well and just doing it to do it. So I think being able to marry the two is really helpful if you're at a job, if you're, I don't know, if I'm looking out back right now and there's like yard work that we have to do. And so rather than going out there and being upset that I have to get sweaty and dirty pulling these bushes out, I'm going to try to shift my perspective and think about it in a way that, okay, I'm removing these bushes, but it's because it's going to allow me to, we're thinking about maybe putting a pool in the backyard. It's so hot here in Miami, but taking out these weeds and these bushes is going to allow us to put in a pool. So being able to just have that perspective shift and see things that you're doing for the good that they can do rather than the fact that they kind of are tough to do in the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, like, it's a very specific example to you, but I think like just that concept of like the yard work makes space for the good things.
Yeah.
The hard work always does that. So that's cool.
One thing that I would love to touch on that, I don't know, is just a thought that I have had recently, and maybe talking about it will help to draw it out in a more formal way. But you mentioned kind of the world that we live in being a little bit soft relative to what it maybe used to be. And I agree. And I don't know that that's a bad thing or a good thing. You know, we do live in these comfortable homes. We've got air conditioning and soft beds. And for me, one of the ways that has actually helped me is while I'm training, something that I've told myself recently, when I'm in the middle of something tough and it hurts, I know that it only lasts so long, and that in an hour or a few, whenever the time may be, I'm going to be inside my comfortable air-conditioned house, showered clean, laying in bed. And so in the moments when I know that's coming, it's almost guaranteed to you unless there's some emergency situation, right? to be able to dig a little bit deeper while I'm training, because I know that I've got this softness and I don't want to always live in that softness. I do enjoy it at times, but if I spent 100% of my time there, I know that I wouldn't feel good. So if I can dig as deep as I can when I'm in it, so that I can really enjoy the softness that I'm going to be given later, that is something that has helped me push a little bit harder in training.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, that comparative like phrase that I think through often is like suffer well in order to rest well,
Mm-hmm.
or like suffer well in order to celebrate well. And
Yeah, I like that.
I think,
Like earn your rest day almost.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a really helpful perspective, because I think we can look around and see the world the way that it is right now, see kind of our, level of humanity to where it's at right now, and just kind of be disappointed in it. And I don't think that's never really the helpful approach. I think that it's always been about leaning into the really like beautiful parts of life that help fuel the difficult parts. And so, I think, primarily that, people weren't coming home to air conditioning or soft beds or whatever, but there had some sense of satisfaction and fulfillment at the end of the hard work. Because if it's just hard work for the sake of it, if it's just suffering for the sake of suffering, then at some point that kind of foundation is going to crumble. Like it's going to.
Yeah, I don't think that'll keep you going.
Yeah, I would imagine not. And I think that yesterday I was just clicking through Instagram and follow a CrossFitter who is probably regionals level. And I don't think he's ever had the opportunity to compete, but he's probably regionals level CrossFitter in terms of ability. And he posted like, here are my key motivations for why I train. And dude, I was just like sad reading it. It was like, this guy laughed at me one time while doing cleans, and I bet he's the one laughing now, or I'd be the one laughing now. And it's just like, man, like that makes me sad for you that that's your motivation.
Yeah.
And rather to be motivated by like what you're saying, when you get into that deep dark place, like think about the really like positive things, and I think that is what fuels you. But so yeah, okay, shifting into a little bit of that, like I would love for people to understand like some tactics to like be happier, and I think the word happy has some kind of like shallow ideas and concepts connected to it. And so like for me, like the word is much more related around joy. What we're actually talking about is this kind of like abundance of an existence of joy regardless of the circumstance. And joy is what impacts, for sure.
Would you say that there's a difference in the definition between joy and happiness? I should have looked that up at some point, but I'm not entirely sure.
I think ultimately that there is, and I definitely think culturally that there's a difference. Happiness, I think, so often is connected to what you can acquire versus joy being something that just exists.
Okay.
So
like that distinction.
Yeah, like happiness is, did you hit the lift or not? And if you did, you're happy. If you didn't, you're not. Joy is more your perspective of, I'm happy to do this, and I'm motivated out of that place of joy to perform well. So I guess that would be my perspective.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
So there's this concept that I'd be interested in hearing your ideas on. So I don't know if you've heard of it, but like back whenever like mining was a really significant thing, which obviously it still is some places, but people would put like living mammals, oftentimes canaries, in mines. And when the canaries were singing, like all things were good. But stop singing, it's because it was an early warning sign that there were basically like toxic gases in the mine. It was this like tactic of like, all right, we're going to put these canaries in the mine, and when they're singing, we know we're set. Whenever they stop singing, it's an early warning sign that something's up.
Interesting.
And so like that phrase, canaries in the mine, for me is like another way of saying red flags. And so for you, what do you think your red flags, your canaries in the mine are to what kind of attacks your sense of happiness and joy?
That's deep, and it's something that I have probably been dealing with a good bit lately. I don't know what it is, and I haven't really been able to pull myself out of it just yet. This sense of what's the way to phrase it? I had the easy sense of joy. You know, I would wake up and I would be excited about life and happy, or I guess I don't now I'm thinking about the difference in the word, but excited to go and train, to interact with people, to just all of the opportunities. I saw like life as an opportunity to go out and do these awesome things. And it's not that that's not the case anymore, but it just came really easy to me and was very natural. And I don't know what that was. I think I was just like in a groove, in a good place. You know, I'd had some good things happen. I was in a beautiful home with my beautiful fiance and my happy, healthy dog. And then since this whole pandemic situation and quarantine and George Floyd and the social injustice, and I don't know, it just hasn't been as easy for me. And that's something that's tough. And it wasn't apparent at first, you know, I was just waking up and having a harder time finding that and getting going. And then after a few weeks of that, I realized I'm like, it's just not as easy as it used to be. Like I have to kind of work a little bit and use more of those perspective shifts in order to find and live that joy that I want and enjoy, you know? So I don't know what the red flags, I guess, like how I started to recognize that it wasn't coming to me as easily as it was before. It's funny, journaling was something that was really easy for me to do, and I was doing very often prior to all of this. And you would almost think the contrary, that like now would be the perfect time to journal. And maybe it is, but I just find myself having a more difficult time reaching for my journal in the way that I was doing it before, because prior to this more difficult time in finding the joy, I would gratitude journal. And so I would just write down a bunch of the little things that I was really thankful for and happy about. And it was just easy. My pen would just flow, and I'd find all these little things that added up to this big, beautiful life that I was living. And lately, I think there have been maybe less of those little things, less of those interactions throughout the day. There are still some, absolutely, but it takes me a little bit longer to sit there and think about it. And so I'm less inclined to go grab my journal and just free flow this stuff, because it's almost a reminder that, hey, there's not as much awesome stuff happening in your life right now as there was before. And so that was kind of maybe a red flag, is like, dang, I haven't journaled in like 2 or 3 weeks. And then I would sit down to journal and I'd find myself stuck and like so that was something for me that maybe is not relatable to everybody else, because I don't know if everyone journals. But it's got to be human interaction as a big part of it. You know, I obviously get to interact with Joanne every day, and then our small little quarantine crew. But prior to being in this quarantine situation, I was at the gym every day, and there were go in, and like we talked about earlier, I really enjoy having a positive impact on. I was able to walk into the gym and smile and go high five everybody and have like a couple good conversations, and see that I was able to bring a little bit of light into that room. That made me brighten up even more. And so now, not having that opportunity to fulfill that, it's been tough, and I think I'm lacking a little bit of.
So maybe, I guess from what I'm hearing there, is like one of the primary things that really like fuels your pursuit of continuing in whatever you're doing, and what kind of fuels your fire in a sense, and then what kind of just fulfills you personally is your ability to like see the impact you're making.
I think so. And yeah, I'm sorry. I know that I kind of ranted there for a bit, but I was sorting through it myself because it is something that I've been trying to figure out lately and trying to find ways that I can bring it back. And one of the things that I think did work for me, was working for a little while, that I want to try the case, was doing Instagram. I know that sounds silly.
Oh yeah.
Friend. So I would do split screen with a buddy of mine and we would do a workout. There I'm getting the interaction with one other person, but then also being able to go through and have in-person conversations with people in the comment section. That was interaction that I was having outside of my home a few times a week. And when I don't know what to call it, but the current situation and the Black Lives Matter movement was kind of at its peak, I felt pretty guilty just going online and doing a workout, maybe ignorant to the fact that everything else is happening in the world. And the first couple days that I did it, I would address what was going on in some way and try to make it relevant to what I was doing. But it always just felt a little off to me. I felt like I shouldn't be doing this right now. I should be doing something else. And so I stopped, and I haven't done the live workouts in maybe a month. But because I realized that it was something that I was enjoying a lot, because, as you just said, I could see the positive impact that it was having on people based on what they were saying to me in the comments and how much they were enjoying the workouts. I want to try to bring it back because it's good for them, which feels good for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that and this may be awkward, like for you to know that like you are used as an example in, I think, lots of conversations, certainly some of the people, just because, in my sphere of owning an affiliate, of coaching athletes, of all that, like those who do it really well are referred to often,
Cool. Thank you.
And so I think in a conversation with a couple of young guys, as they're, super fired up, want to pursue everything that, all of their goals in CrossFit and the CrossFit space and sport, is just bringing to their mentality of like, yes, it would be cool to be the best. But I think that you can look at specific athletes like Noah or like Cole or Katrin, or, athletes that are really like nailing the reality that their platform gives them the ability to do more than perform. And I think that when I watch you interact with the community, even like virtually on Instagram and such, it's obvious that it isn't this like narcissistic celebrity mentality of give to me, like praise me,
yeah,
or whatever.
Definitely not.
And this is really, I guess, shifting into the thing I want to hear from you most about. I think you have a particularly special ability to humanize people, meaning like you don't see like just a grayscale demographic of followers or fans. I think you operate with the clarity of this conversation is with another human being. This conversation is with somebody who has a mind, a body, and a soul. And so, which is very unique because in celebrity culture, which I mean, you just are,
D-list.
Yeah. In celebrity culture, man, it really is odd to me because we like worship celebrities rather than with your celebrity influence, your status, you kind of flip the script on that and go, all right, no, I can do more with it than I could take with it.
Yeah.
So
I think, referencing those kids that you were talking to, I think that you don't know until you have it. Like I said before, was very selfish in my pursuits, and I didn't realize that there was this impact that could be actualized until I had the platform and the followers to do so. So maybe for these guys, they have, I don't know, a couple hundred followers, and it's not all about the followers, but for them, they kind of need to be able to build to selfishly, in a way, better themselves until they get to a point where then they can use that better version of themselves to have an impact on somebody, because maybe they don't have the platform to have the impact, or to be able to see that they're having the impact yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so all that to say that it took a while for me to see that I was able to have an impact on people. And then when I did finally realize that I was in a place to do so, to also recognize that I'm still the same guy that I was when I had 10 followers. You know, like everybody that has, no matter how many followers you have, you're just a person. And I think people can get that twisted a little bit, like that's a celebrity is in a different tier, a different status because of the followers that they have or the things that they've accomplished. But at the end of the day, they're a person that once didn't have all those things, and they worked pretty hard and did something that elevated them to the point that they're at now. And so I think being aware of that and recognizing that I am the kid that's asking me for advice, like I was the one doing that 6-7 years ago. I was on Facebook the other day and I saw a message that I sent to Rich Froning like 9 years ago, asking him for advice. And it was one of those silly things. Like I'll get that message relatively often where it's just somebody that says, hey, I just started CrossFit. What would be some advice that you would give me to be a competitor? And like, that's so general and vague, and there's not like a great answer to give there. But when I read those, sometimes it can be easy to write it off, but then every now and then I'll remember like, hey, that was me. And so I want to be able to help the young me's and more. And that's just one way that I think I am able to be kept down to earth.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like that is a perfect example of just kind of that idea of just interacting with people, understanding that like it's an equal playing field, you know, like clearly some of us are better than others at certain things. But that's not really what, you know, elevates your humanity. You know, anybody can improve an ability. It's yourself. And I think that like that example of somebody sending you a random message, man, like how often do we do that even in face-to-face conversations? When somebody comes up to us and starts talking, you're like, man, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Like that is so significant to, I think, the larger issue that we're facing, which is our ability to like legitimately dehumanize people. And so I just kind of want to hear about that a little bit. Is I think that in reference to your kind of red flags, your canary in the mind, or in the mind concept of just having a harder time finding that like sense of ease when it comes to joy. Do you feel like it's maybe at all connected to how hard you have leaned in to the realities of what's happening in the world? Like you've let in like the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously George Floyd was like a huge catalyst for that, and that situation. And so like I want to have that conversation more than anything.
Yeah.
About racism and racial injustice. But I think for me, man, like I'm all into Black Lives Matter, you know, and it doesn't to me at all disparage to say all lives matter or Black Lives Matter, one or the other. Right now, put spotlight on it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately, the issue is like, we as a human race have had the ability to dehumanize demographics of people for years and years and years. And I think that until we have the ability to look a person in the eyes and see them for what they are, which is a soul, that we lack that ability at a larger racial level too.
Yeah.
What are you learning about that? Do you feel like you've let in you're not operating with ignorance anymore? Like you've let in the reality that like it's broken, like people are hurting, and you wake up every day wanting to make a difference and you don't know how. Like,
now that you mention it, maybe that is some of the heaviness that I've been feeling, is my lack of understanding of what to do. You know, I think at the beginning of it all, there was definitely this heaviness that Joanne and I felt, and like were very, very impacted by. And not to, I don't know, obviously I feel like sometimes you have to clarify what you're saying, obviously not to seek any pity in any way, but there were just moments where, like, seeing what was going on out there in the world and just understanding how much people were hurting and really just enraged, like, it touched me and it made me feel a lot of those feelings, even though it wasn't direct. You know, I wasn't experiencing it myself, but being empathetic to it, being able to really feel it, it was heavy. And I feel like some of that, like, deeply emotional, angry, sad negativity has faded a little bit. You know, I hate to admit that in a way. It's good to get rid of some of that, but to be able to say that that's not as strong as it was before, I almost feel guilty. But as time goes on, or as time has gone on, I think waking up every day and maybe not seeing it all over Instagram or all over the news, but still knowing that it's going on out there, and knowing that, like, I don't know, I just have wanted to find, I've done little things, you know, I'm not going to list the little things that I have done to try to make that situation better, but I want to do more, and I want to daily be able to do something that's going to have a positive impact on that group of people that need help and need love and want to be, like you said, just humanized and seen the same way that everybody else is seen. So to wake up every day and not be able to know what to do to help somebody that you want to help so badly, I think potentially could be what is making it hard for me to find that joy that was so easy to find before.
Yeah. And I think that from a personal actionable perspective, that makes a ton of sense. Like, just feeling helpless in a sense.
Yeah.
And then in another sense, taking it away from anything personal and just knowing, dude, you opened your eyes to the fact that the world is just maybe more broken than we realized.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's where I was at with it. And that I'm so frustrated with myself that it took what it took to start.
Right.
And I would say I've always cared.
Right.
But I think I casually and conveniently just chose to think it was a non-issue.
Right.
And it's an issue. Yeah. Like, it definitely is. And so there is that personal sense of helplessness of going, what do we do? What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to make the impact. I don't know how to elevate them out of that situation. But I think it's also just a huge worldview and perspective shift. So I just wonder how much of it is just you now wake up every day and it's not this, the Miami vibes of
butterflies and rainbows and whatever. Yeah.
Wake up every day and it's like, sheesh, like the world is broken, man. And
I don't want to succumb to that though, you know, because I know that.
Right.
I know that that's not forever. I recognize that is the case, but I want to also be hopeful. You know, I don't want everybody to wake up and think sheesh, and then that's it. And then we live in this dark, dreary world. I would love for us to be able to pursue ways to make it better. And that's what I want to try to do. I think that's where the helplessness maybe comes from. And it's not complete helplessness to the point where I'm giving up. It's like this racking my brain helplessness. Like, all right, what can I do? I tried this yesterday and maybe that didn't do anything. Or I ideated a lot of stuff yesterday, but didn't actually actionably do anything. And I think that there are things that I'm going to be able to figure out and do to help. And I don't want people listening to this to just be like, these guys are useless. You know, they're not doing anything. They care, and so what? But that's not helping. There are definitely things that I'm going to try to implement that are going to help. Because, like you, I'm very much committed to trying to make the world a better place for everybody.
Right.
So I don't know. I hope something clicks and I figure something out. Maybe it's a bunch of small things that you look back on eventually that added up to a lot. Maybe it's one bright idea that does make a big impact. I like that because that's more tangible. Like you can see that and feel that more when you do something big. But I think the little things matter too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say that there's like a kid's book called What If Everybody Did? And it's just like pictures of the whole concept is if one person does this, cool. But if everybody does it, imagine what would happen. And it's mostly painted in
It's
like,
crazy.
yeah, it's mostly painted like a negative light of like one of the pictures is, all right, if one person tracks through a house with muddy shoes, like that's easy to get. What if everybody did it? And then the picture is there's like mud on the
filthy. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think like to give a sense of hope, man, what are like a couple of things that it doesn't have to be like the ways that Noah solves racism, you know, like what are ways that you live purposefully every day to, and that you would say, man, if everybody did this, like, I think we,
yeah. Yeah. Man, it's so tough now too. And I don't want to use this as an excuse, but because we are in quarantine, I feel limited in what I'm able to physically do. And I'm a very manual labor type of person. You know, it's what I do every day is work with my body. And so to not be able to get out there, like I wanted to go participate in the protests because that was like, I could put my feet on the ground and be there physically doing something. I don't necessarily know exactly what I was doing, but it felt like I was doing something, standing up for people, you know? Right. And so now that is a little bit more limited because of us kind of being quarantined at home, the answer is different than maybe it would have been in a situation where it was just normal life and you're out there every day interacting with people. Because I feel like if that was the case, then it could be really small and simple, or that could be a piece of it, is literally going out of your way to consciously be kind and social and talkative to everybody, you know, not just the people you're friends with, but people that you don't know and people of all skin colors, ages, all of that stuff. Like little conversations can go a long way. So I think being able to do that in person is awesome once that's available to us again. And so a virtual means of doing so,
yeah,
it's tough because I think there's also potentially a fine line between like highlighting, for example, one thing that I thought that maybe I could do, and I still don't know if this is a great idea, but those live workouts that I was doing, I thought, you know, what if every week I try to pair up with a athlete that is a person of color, and it's a different person of color that I can highlight on my platform, give people the opportunity to get to know them better, myself, hear their stories, learn from them. And I think that could potentially be something that is seen in a good light, but then that could also be looked at strangely, you know, like the white guy that's just purposely trying to link up with a bunch of black guys and girls. Like, I don't know. It's so sensitive out there that I don't know what's right and borderline wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're probably like one of the premier examples of somebody who has like this like overflowing pool of desire to make a difference and of just natural care, and you like don't know where to put it. And
yeah,
like in our conversations about this, like I want to sit down with you know 3 or 4 black athletes in the CrossFit community and just listen, like say, hey, I'm putting this on and just talk because we want to learn, like educate us on the reality because we've been ignorant for too long, you know. I think you've done that because you have great relationships with people, but I think it's the hesitancy to, I don't want to offend anyone, that it kind of ties our hands behind our back.
Yeah. And I don't want to be held back by that, you know? That was something that we dealt with a little bit at the beginning, Joanne and I, like, how much should we really say right now? What's appropriate for us to say? And at one point, I said, you know what? I'm not going to let that limit me and let that put us in the background. I want to stand up and I want to say what we really feel and what we really believe. And that was very well received by most people. You know, most people felt very supported and appreciated the fact that we were taking a stand and saying what we felt. So yeah, maybe that is something to move forward with. I had something else that I just thought, but I can't remember it now. So I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think, man, I think it's the old quote of, like, the only way to avoid criticism is to stand for nothing, to say nothing, to believe nothing.
Yeah.
That's also the surest way to never make an impact. So
right.
It kind of comes with the territory of, impact and influence, and trying to create change welcomes criticism.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really kind of putting yourself in front of the firing squad of our culture that just anyone can say whatever they want whenever. But I think that's a bold move on your part, and I think it's what we all are called to do, in a sense, is put ourselves, in harm's way. At the forefront of criticism for the sake of creating a sense of change. It's not keep calm and carry on, like the old English poster anymore. It's like get angry and change something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be mad anger. It's just like let's be extra hungry here.
It's usually the riskiest things that pay off the most, right? Like the things that put you in the fire are either going to benefit you and everybody else the most, or blow up and be bad. But the other option there is just nothing at all. Either like very little to no payoff and all little to no risk. So I don't know. I'd rather risk a lot to get a big payoff, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if you're like a music guy or a musical guy or whatever, but have you jumped on the Hamilton train? Have you watched it?
No, I haven't yet, but I actually really would like to. A friend of mine watched it recently and said it was really good, and then it kind of addresses some of the current issues. So I would love to watch it.
It does, and it does so like in a really beautifully like indirect way. And so, first of all, like the cast is like completely like multi-racial, and the guy that plays George Washington is an African American, and it's like you don't even care. You don't really. It's awesome. Cool. So there's that sense. It's also one of the most creative things I've ever seen. So it's really nice. But there's a character in it who's obviously a historical character. His name's Aaron Burr. And his whole phrase behind this guy's like political aspirations, his personal aspirations, the whole phrase that he lives by is talk less, smile more, don't let them know what you're against or what you're for. And that is the like summary of weak leadership. And I think and that's exactly, it's like, what are you doing then? And I mean, that's the whole idea is like, bro, stand for something. Yeah. And so I think that ultimately, like, I see you wrestle with that, and I see like so much of the world wrestling with that. But I think people are inspired by your willingness to make sure people know what you're against and make sure people know what you're for. I think that you doing that at your level, putting yourself in front of criticism, is what motivates me at my level, what motivates people at our gym at their level, what motivates all of us to say, like, cool. We would step up to the plate and just say, this is wrong.
Yeah, right. I think it's as simple as that. Sometimes people just need it to be said to know where you stand. I talking to a few people about the whole CrossFit situation, when they hadn't really directly addressed anything for a while, a few people were like, it's so simple. All they have to do is say the sentence and we're good. You don't have to do much more. If you do more, great. That's better. But at least say it so that we know that you care.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was like, that's the CrossFit culture red flag or canary in the mine is like, bro, why aren't you saying something? Like,
yeah.
because that reveals a deeper issue of bad culture, bad leadership, narcissism, or whatever, you know?
Yeah. And hopefully that all changes here in the near future, but
I think it's awesome.
yeah, man.
How it's panning out, but yeah, well, no, man, I obviously appreciate the time and the conversation. I think that people are motivated highly by your influence, and I think what's cool is you don't have everything figured out, like the actionable steps behind how to
Yeah.
do things. But I literally think people are inspired by your pursuit of figuring it out.
Yeah. I hope so. And I'm so open to ideas and help too. You know, I almost feel guilty right now that you and I didn't have this a moment where we figured it all out and could share that with the world. That would have been amazing, but we didn't, and that's okay. And maybe there's somebody out there that has some ideas that they're willing to share with us. And I know that we'd both be open to hearing that and maybe being able to use it in some way. So
For sure. And I think that, yeah, I don't think that there's a strategy or a tactic to solve it, man, as much as it is taking personal responsibility. And
mm-hmm.
I think the more people that can have conversations around taking personal responsibility is what's going to kind of create a sense of change. And I would say the thing you operate with is a desire to elevate everything around you, to improve yourself, to elevate everything that exists around you. It's to first, create a sense of like elevating life for Joanne and what you guys have at home, and then it's elevating your peak community and
yeah, just try to make everything better.
yeah. And I think that when you do that from a place of genuine, like heartfelt desire for other people, like that is rewarded. And so, yeah, I think that what you do is huge, and your impact is big, but this whole kind of vision is just having conversations with people that help normal 9 to 5 day-to-day people, or weekend warrior CrossFitters, or CrossFitters that are losing 100 pounds in our gym, or the lady who's trying to just do her first box jump. Learn what it means to be like, to make an impact, and to live on purpose.
Yeah.
Conversations are just helpful sometimes, and sometimes it's all we can do is have those.
I agree. I think that's the basis of it all too. Like I was kind of trying to say earlier, no matter how big your platform is, just a conversation that you have with somebody can be so impactful. So people shouldn't be discouraged by the fact that they are just them, maybe don't have a big following. Like you can have a huge impact. Tying back into the first thing we talked about, you never know the one thing that you may say to somebody that could change their world. So and anybody can say it at any point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just operating, I think, with that sense of conviction. And so one thing I mentioned, one of the things I want to ask all the guests is, like, in your now 29 years, what is like one general truth that you have learned about people, like about generally, like other people?
I thought about this a bit. I'm glad that you gave me a bit of time to ponder it. And I didn't really have an answer solidified until this morning, when a couple of my friends came over to use our little carport gym. And it kind of hit me then that with people, typically you get back what you put in.
Yeah.
So the amount of energy that you give them, the mood, and the vibe that you give off to somebody. If they walked up to my house, and if I came out all sleepy and grumpy and not talkative and just like, hey, and went back inside, then that would have been it. And neither of us would have really benefited from that. They probably would have almost maybe been a little bit bummed out starting their day, like, I wonder what's wrong with him. But if I were to have gone out there and was like super happy and in a good mood and playful, like, what's up, guys? How's your morning been? What are you guys getting into today? The more that I put that into them, the more they would have given back to me. And it was the beginning of my day. So having gotten all of that from them would have been able to fuel me to now like go inside, be in a good mood, maybe make a phone call to somebody that I wouldn't have prior. So obviously that's not just with people, right? That applies to a lot of other things in life. Like you're going to get out what you put in. And so if you put in a lot of good stuff and if you make that effort to put in the good, you're probably going to get a lot of good back.
Yeah. It's always just kind of the idea of reciprocation, I guess.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I think I see that all the time, man, especially with people with like influence and leadership. When the leader walks into the room and like they bring the bad vibes, the whole leads, you know?
Yeah. And I used to, you just made me think of like a coach at a gym, right? I'm sure you see that often. I would go in there and I'd be having a really bad day and not want to go coach and put on a show for 20 people. And I remember one time somebody told me, well, they're here for a happy hour. So you can't bring that out there to them. You got to fake it until you make it. And so the first couple of times I would just be like, all right, I'm going to like put on a little bit of a face. And within 5 to 10 minutes, me being this fake happy, I would get back a lot of this real happy. And then that would turn me into real happy.
Right. Yeah. Which was motivated by your desire to impact other people. You know, you decided to shift focus off of yourself and onto other people. And then all of a sudden the whole environment changed, including you.
Yeah, for sure.
It's huge. It's really cool. So, all right, man. Well, obviously I hope that what you're training for is the CrossFit Games. We'll get to do that again. And I would just continue to, encourage you as well as everybody that's inspired by you or that's listening to this, that I remember really distinctly in 2018 when I got to volunteer at the CrossFit Games. So I was a scoring judge. And it was so clear that a really common theme that year was that like Noah was the people's champ.
That's awesome, man. I love that.
And so like that phrase was going around, just even like the stadium and like the whole grounds where the games were at Madison. It was going around Twitter. It was going around Instagram. They're like, Noah's the people's champ. Noah's the people's
I didn't even know that. I love it.
There's a reason for that, and so continuing to be like the people's champ, and then hopeful that it's like the CrossFit champ as well.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Take the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing to merge those together. And for people to know, like the same way that you're compelled to be the people's champ, like so should we be in all of our efforts and what we do. So
absolutely.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the time, and just keep us updated on how we can help. And obviously if you guys want to go follow Noah, if you don't follow him now, he's on Instagram, and you on Twitter?
Yeah, pretty much Instagram, just like reposts to Twitter and Facebook.
Well, just give Noah a follow on Instagram. Post a lot of awesome content, as well as some helpful stuff if you're still training at home, if you're stuck at home, as well. And I know there's been a number of days where I haven't really wanted to work out, and the guys like Noah are compelling and motivating for me as well. So,
man.
Appreciate the time, dude. Any final thoughts, words, anything?
Yeah, just thank you so much, JP. I'm excited for what you're doing, what you're putting out there in the world. I think, again, like we just said, you're putting a lot of good stuff out there, and I hope a lot of good stuff comes back to you. Keep moving always forward, my brother.
Dude, I appreciate it. I will. We'll stop the recording there. We'll catch up later.
Boom.